Hi, we have already completed Module 1 and Module 2. So today we will be starting a new module. So the Module 1 was teaching you what is research. The Module 2 was focusing on the problems to sources, which is essentially trying to teach you how to get access to different sources of data, literature, etc., to build the knowledge base of your research. And then now in the module 3, you will be knowing how to use different research methods, design your research, and try to find answers to your interesting research question. So stay with me. Today we will be starting the Unit 1 of Module 3. In the Unit 1 of Module 3, you will be learning about organizing data. In Module 2, last unit, you have learned about data collection, the different types of data that you are going to collect. And this unit, you are trying to organize the data. So why do we need to organize data? That can be one of your questions. So let's go through the research data cycle a little bit to understand why we are trying to organize our data. So while, doing research, we have to do a lot of planning. So the planning comes in the very first stage, and we plan how to collect our data. Once we plan how to collect our data, we do all the data collection and then move to processing and data analysis. So, in between data collection and processing, we also saw that we need to store the data and preserve the data, both the analyzed data and the collected data. So we are in the data preservation area. So why do we need to preserve the data? We need to preserve the data for various reasons. One, we need to keep evidence of the research that we are doing. So we need to share our research or share our data sometimes to the academic community or to the audience of our research to show, okay, this is the data and this is what I found from the data. Then you might be reusing the data to build up upon your existing research and then start planning the other research. So there you can reuse the data. So then your data collection work becomes less heavy. So as you can see from this diagram, it's a cyclical process through which you collect data and preserve data, reuse data in different research you keep doing. Also, there are other reasons attached to it. So to break it down, you can see that if we can reuse data, we save time. And also, if we organize the data well, we can consolidate the data by organizing it. So we can save, say, one table instead of 200 tables and using 2 gigabytes of our computer space. So we are actually saving time and storage space. And always remember that when you are working on research or any kind of research consistently, you are running out of space on your computer by saving all the data. So be really, really careful about the storage space you are using. You are also preventing the loss of data by organizing a data. You can mistakenly, delete a data thinking that it might not be required. Or you may also put a data in a different location and you never find it. And so if you organize the data by project file or folder, then you can prevent the loss of data and save a lot of time and not duplicate the storage constantly. By organizing your data, you can also allow efficient collaboration between your research group, and also you can share it with other research groups who is interested to work with you in future. So basically, you are facilitating the reuse and preservation of the data. So you are again saving time and allowing more efficiency throughout the research process continuously. What does file organization involve? Primarily, it might involve some of the naming convention, then creating a folder structure or hierarchy, and then having a version control for your data. Now we will go through each of these, 3 aspects, and I will try to explain why these are important while we are organizing our data. So file naming is one thing that we have to be very careful about. So what is the file name actually doing? It is actually the identifier of a file. So if you do not name a file properly, if you will never remember, what the file, is about, and you may be naming 2 files so similarly that you will never understand which file is for what, and then you have to open the file, make sure there is some difference in the content, and you might be very confused. So you try to reduce ambiguity by giving a proper, concise, and meaningful file name. So there are some examples and criteria for naming your file. So for example, you might be including the type of file in the file name. So if you are collecting data from census, you might give census somewhere in the name so that it's a census data and it's not something else. Then you need to know what type of census data is it. Is it the population data? Is it like household income data? What is it? So then you may add a little bit of description. So here I put HH Inc., like household income. You may also put the date collected. So what's either date collected or, what year of of household income is it representing? So whichever you feel is most relevant for your data storage, you give that name. And then you may also put acronyms with a number. So if you are, say, taking 100 interviews, you may need to put, a number which is relevant for that interview, and you put a number to the file. Then you also need to have some file format. So you identify, okay, this is the Excel or CSV, so it seems like a tabular data, or it's a JPEG or TIFF, so it's a image data, or it's a PDF, so it's a text data or something. So it's very important for you to have all these different characteristics on the file name when you are browsing your data. So be careful about how you are naming your file. So there are a couple examples below, and you can make out one is, say, census data, and the other is of a census data showing household income in 2020, and it's in CSV format. And the second one is interview done in February 4th, 2023. and it's an interview data. And so I put an acronym of I and then 001 to show that that's like the first interview that I have done, and it's in audio or MP4 format, which probably needs to be transcribed. So, going through once again the different best practices for naming your file, avoid very long names because that can be very confusing and you might not be reading it completely all the time. Use codes or acronyms, like I said, use some numbers, use some kind of identifier. Do not use special characters or space on your data files because you might be using different programs or softwares which don't know how to read a space. For example, sometimes GIS cannot read space, and also special characters like hash tag, period, or some question mark might not be a good thing to add in on a file name because it could be interpreted by the computer or the software you are using in different ways. And in some cases, they are not allowed as well. Use underscores and camel case. So camel case is essentially using two words without space, and like the camel case is written, right? So camel and case, so two words without the space in between, and just using a capital letter for the second word so that people can read it as two different words but still not use any space in between. So that's something you can use. Then if you are using a date, then use the ISO standard for date, which is year, month, and day. So, or if you're using some other strategy, keep in mind what strategy you are using. It's always good to write it down on a memo or metadata sheet. So do that. And then you can also put some sequential numbers like 001, 002 on your file name. So you want to put some leading zeros depending on how many files you are going to have. So for example, if you plan to do 10 interviews, you can put 01 for the interview 1, 02 for interview 2, and so on. If you want to do 100 interviews, then you can put 001, then 002, because your number is going up to 3 digits. So depending on how many files you are going to generate for a particular data, you might be using a sequential number with number of leading zeros based on that. Try to make a good folder structure and a hierarchy. Here is an example. So if you have a research folder, have literature, data, raw data, figures and maps, analysis tables, write-up in different folders. So when you see it, okay, here is my raw data, here is my analyzed data, here is my literature. So you will not be confounded by different file types, names, and redundant files, and spend a lot of time there. Avoid overlapping categories. So it's best to have, one category and not like data 1 and then data 2, because data 2 seems like a more clean data. So then have the data and then put in the subfolders clean data or something. So make a structure, and the structure can be anything, but it has to be simple and organized. Here is an example of what you might have. So it should reflect the folder content, the type of data, and data that has been processed and cleaned, for example. So in the data folder, you have 2019 census, meaning you have a time period for the data, and you have 2 different folders for that. So 2019 and 2020 census, you have collected the data in 2 different folders. And then you have the process data table. So if you have, say, combined the 2 years together and cleaned it up a little bit, reducing the redundant or replicating columns, then you might put it together in one Excel or CSV file and put it under processed data tables. So that way you know where your data sets are and you are not confusing yourself if you are looking after 1 year or maybe after 2 weeks, you have forgotten where you have kept the data, and that would take you so much more time and effort to recollect the data or just find out where you have actually put your data. So what do you mean by version control of data? So whenever you change or update the data after any kind of initial cleaning or any type of processing, the following steps are essential. So whenever you are changing anything in a data, you are actually creating a new version of the same data. So when you do a new version, it's the best to make some kind of change in the file name, giving a date, kind of file header, change in the record some change in the file log, and create a version table. Okay, this is the day when I changed the file. So you can have those manual systems in order to track the versions and track the record, because you might forget, okay, I made a change, but when did I do the change? What type of change did I do? So you need to keep a record of that. You might remember it for next couple weeks, but you will eventually forget. So if you make the initial effort to write down what changes you have done, then you will see that it would be a lot easier for you to access the files and reuse those files. There is another way of version control, which is automatic way of version control, and that when you are changing something in GitHub or Git, you are actually creating an automatic version of another file. Sometimes some of the drives, they do let you save different version of the same file, but it's not as much controlled and automatic as Git or GitHub. You may not need Git or GitHub in this course, and they are for more advanced user. So I would suggest you to focus more on the manual change of file names at this point. And so make sure if you're changing something in the file, you save as and note down what changes you have made and put it in the right folder, and create a version table. Whenever you are making any change, you just put that change, what change you have done and what time you have done the change. So a data organization is a very important part. So I would like to conclude by saying that very important is to plan a file organization before you start collecting all your data. So plan a file organization at the very beginning of your research. Document any decisions that you are taking on a memo. So for example, if you are making some changes or if you think you will forget something, then always keep a memo in every folder or subfolder, writing about the changes you are doing. Everything that you are changing is a version of the same file or different file. So make sure of that. And then you may also give some, abbreviation names and something that you want to record in your memo. And whatever you do, be consistent with your upkeep of the research data. So that's all I have for today. And then we will be working on other subunit of the module 3 next week. And that module would be data analysis and visualization.